everybody, this is Jennifer, and today I'm going to be wire wrapping this Amethyst Cabochon. And to start, I'm going to measure out my stone, and it measures out to about 1¼ inches. And to fully measure the stone, what I like to do is I like to then roll it up, roll it to the side, and then roll it up on its end again. And it comes out to almost 2½ inches. So I'm going to add 6 inches to that for the amount of wire I need. So I'm going to cut about 8½ inches of wire, and I'm using Parawire, and I'm using 21 gauge square wire in silver. And the way I like to get my wire prepared to cut is I like to take my nylon jaw pliers, and I like to just straighten the wire out like that. And I always straighten more than what I need. And then I'm just going to measure it out here on my ruler and get approximately 8½ inches. If it goes a little over, that's fine. I'm going to use my Xuron cutters, and I'm just going to cut it. And then I'm going to replicate that 2 more times, and I will be right back. Okay, so I've cut the 3 pieces of square wire that I need. And you could also do this tutorial with round wire. You just can't get the twisted effect that I'm going to show you later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my square wire together. And one thing that's nice about square wire is the way you can get it to lay perfectly flat against each other. And I'm going to take a piece of this 21 gauge half round wire in silver. And half round, it's rounded on one side and then it's flat on the other. And you always want the flat side. I know you probably can't see that, but you want to make sure the flat side goes against your wire and the round side is on the outside. So I want this to be the inside of my piece, since there's already a gentle curve going on. And I'm going to go towards the middle, and I'm going to just start wrapping this quite a few times. And you don't want to wrap too tight, but not too loose. And you just want to keep it following it around with your fingers like that, and you can straighten it out if you need to a little bit. But I'm going to wrap this just a little ways. Okay, so I'm wrapping this, and I'm just going to use this whole piece of wire. I'm not sure how many wraps this is, but I wanted it to cover a good part of the bottom of my stone. And I'm going to stop right there so I can trim my wire. And I'm going to trim it with my Xuron cutters. And I'm going to cut these pieces, and I'm going to make sure they're kind of towards the middle of where I cut, towards the middle piece wire where I cut it. Right there, so I can tuck that on the inside. So this will be the inside of my piece. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to take my flat nose pliers from Xuron, and I'm going to just kind of flatten this weave out, and that'll make it a little bit more secure. And so I'm just gently flattening the pieces out. And then and that made a little bit of a gap in my wire. So what I want to do here is I just want to take it and gently press it together. And I want to make sure definitely that it's pressed together on the outside. Okay, and so it's pressed together. So I want to now do a few wraps of my wire right here on this side and on this side. And this will help keep your stone in place. So I'm going to make sure this stays the back. And I'm just going to, and this can be slid if you need to slide it a little bit. So I'm going to find the flat side and the round side of my wire, of my half round. And I'm going to just wrap it a few times. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm just going to kind of press this together with my nails. And then I'm going to trim this towards the middle wire. And I'm going to go ahead and press that end down. And then I'm going to trim this one. And it helps to raise it up a little bit to trim it. And be careful with your wire because I was not smart there and it just flew. So be careful because you don't want wire to go in your eyes. But now I'm going to press this wire end down and I'm going to press these together. And I'm just going to gently flatten this out. And I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side and use the rest of that piece of half round. I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit with my fingers. And I'm going to start right here because I can slide this to go wherever I need it to go. So there's 2 wraps, 3 wraps. And I'm going to go ahead and press that together. And then 1 more wrap for 4. And I'm just going to press that all together. And I'm going to trim this. And I'm going to trim that side. And now I'm going to gently press all of this down. And that little end was coming off the other side. So I'm just going to press those together and press them flat. And I'm going to make sure they're together on this side as well. And I think I want to press it just a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing right here. Make sure everything is together. So I have my wraps done in the middle and then on each side, and I'm just feeling them to make sure I don't feel any roughness coming out or any sharpness that would scratch someone or catch on their clothes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wire and I'm just going to gently start bending it up. Kind of into a U shape. And just kind of start gently hand bending it. Trying to keep everything flat down here. And you might need to press your wires against it gently and against this part. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my stone and I'm going to put it the side, I want to put the dark side down. And I'm going to lay this on my table, and this stone is actually very slippery, so if it slips out, don't be surprised. But I'm just going to start gently pressing my wire up around my stone. And then I'm going to get my wire. And this is easiest to do on a table. And so I'm just going to pull my wire around. It's crossing each other, so hold on. I want to have some on top, one set on top and one on the bottom. And I'm going to cross it like that. And now that I'm going to bend it up like that. And I'm going to do that to this side. I'm going to bend it up. And I want it to be able to meet in the middle. So I'm taking a pretty long length of my half round wire. I'd say it's probably good 8 inches, 9 inches. And you're going to need a good bit because you're going to bind here, and then we're going to make the bail with the same wire. And so what I need to do now is find the round side and the flat side, and I want the flat side down. And I'm going to come down as low as I can on here and start wrapping around, and I'm going to leave a tail just in case I need it at the end. And so I'm going to make sure the flat side is down, running my fingers along it to keep it tight and to keep it flat so the flat side stays down. And I'm just wrapping it a few times. So now what I need to do is I need to separate my wires and figure out which wires are in the front, which are in the middle, and which are in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure my wires are flat on the sides so that I can easily find these wires. So what I'm doing is I'm separating my wires and I'm pulling down the wires that are in the front and in the middle, leaving me with these two pieces of wire in the back. So now I'm going to press them, pull them together, and I'm going to keep my finger, I'm going to keep my finger on my wire, and I'm going to roll the wire around like that. And I want to press this down in here as far as I can get it, because that'll help with binding it and help with the strength. And just keep your finger on the wire and roll it. And every few wraps or every couple wraps, just press it down, because right down here you can't get your pliers in that well. And you just want to keep your finger on that wire as you're guiding it around the bail. And this is one of the easiest ways to make a bail, and it's neat. And I think it actually sets the piece off nicely. But you just want to keep wrapping. And I just have my hand on here. I'm just guiding it. And I see a couple gaps, so I'm just going to press down. And then I'm going to make sure I'm not overlapping anything. And I'm going to keep wrapping till I get to where I want to go. And I want my bail to be a decent length. And you want to keep these wrapping pretty tight, but if you wrap like this, it will keep it pretty tight. And I'm probably going to use this entire piece of wire. And I want to have the end of my wire actually on this back side right here. But first, before I cut anything, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pliers, my flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to gently press everything down, except for that one wire that I'm going to cut in a second. And then I want to cut this wire so it's on the back side, because I'm going to fold the bail backwards. And that way it will hide the wire. So I'm going to cut it pretty short. And I'm going to press it down with my pliers. And I prefer using flat nose pliers over my needle nose pliers for this, because I feel like it flattens it more evenly than the needle nose, because it covers more space at one time. And I just like the way it looks better. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to unwrap this a little bit, unwrap that a couple wraps. And I'm going to bend my bail, and you can use some bail making pliers, which are these stepped pliers, to make your bail, but I'm just going to use my finger, and I'm just going to fold it over and bend it inwards like that. And actually I want to unwrap this, fully unwrap that. And so now I'm going to wrap this back, but I'm going to connect the bail to it. And since it's a little bit kinked right there, I'm going to use my wire straighteners. And now I'm going to pull these wires up and out of my way, and I'm going to wrap this around, and I want to try to get everything flat and straight, and I'm going to wrap it down as much as I can. And now I'm going to try to go one more time, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to pull it in the back. And now I'm going to take my bent nose pliers because they're good for getting into tight places. And I'm just going to pull this wire right there. I'm going to tuck it up as much as I can. And I want to cut this so it stays on the inside. Now I'm going to use my bent nose pliers, and I'm going to tuck that piece of wire in there and press it down really tight. And that's what bent nose pliers are really good for, getting into small areas. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to just pull this up out of the way. I'm going to leave these up. And I'm going to slide these little side binding wires. I'm going to slide them up about halfway. And I'm going to slide this one up about halfway. And I'm just going to try to straighten everything out a little bit. And I'm going to slide this part in the middle. And I'm going to place my stone in and just make sure everything's looking right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my stone into my setting like this. And I'm going to take my bent nose pliers because they're really fine tipped. And I'm just going to wedge them in here in between the front wire and the middle wire, because I need to be able to lift that wire up just a little bit. And I've lifted it up like that. And I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. And I want to make sure these wires are about in the same spot. And I'm going to wedge my pliers in there and just lift it up. I'm just lifting. I'm not actually really bending. And so I'm just trying to get everything situated for my stone right now. And I'm going to do the same thing right here. I'm just going to get in between these two wires right here. And I'm going to do what I did at the bottom and just gently lift. And I'm also going to look at my binding wires and make sure they're pretty much where I want them, because this is going to make them stay where they're not going to be able to really be moved much. And I'm going to take this top wire here. I'm going to wedge my pliers in between there. And I just lifted that wire up just a little bit. And this is starting to get your framing shape. So now I'm going to pop that in there. Like that. And of course this isn't holding it in. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers. And I'm going to hold my stone in the front. And I'm going to take this back wire and I'm just going to bend it in. So now I'm going to take this side. I'm going to set my stone down. Now I'm going to take this side. I'm going to make sure this is centered. Okay. And so now I'm going to take this side and this very back wire, and I'm just going to bend it in just like I did the other side. and I just folded it in. So now I'm going to do the same thing at the top. I'm going to take that backmost wire and I'm going to bend it in. And I'm going to also take this backmost wire and bend it in. And then we can adjust this more if we need to. Now I'm going to go to the front and I'm going to pop my stone in. And I'm going to take my needle nose pliers for this. And I'm going to start lifting up this bottom wire where I had lifted it and separated it before. And I'm just going to gently pull it over my stone. And I'm going to do that to this other side and lift it up and gently pull it. And then I'm going to look at both of those and make sure they look about even. And this one looks like it needs to come in just a touch. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm just going to pull it down and kind of bend it in. And then I'm going to take this wire and I'm just going to kind of bend it in like that. And I want to tighten the back just a little bit more, so I'm going to grab this wire, but I'm just going to twist that in. And then I'm going to twist that in. And I'm going to twist this one in. And I'm going to twist this one in. And that'll help really hold the stone in better. And the stone should be fairly well secure now. You shouldn't really be able to easily push it out. So now that the stone is set in there, we're going to take these two wires and finish these off in the back. So I'm just going to cut them both off fairly short at about the same place. I'm going to cut them at the same time. And now I'm going to take my Lindstrom fine tipped round nose pliers. Since this is a smaller stone, I want to use my really little pliers. And I'm just going to make a little swirl on each side in the back. I'm going to press this down. And I'm going to just make a little swirl here. And then I'm going to press that down so it's flat. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And that just mostly gets the wires out of the way for me, because I'm not going to use these wires. So I'm going to twist that one. And take my needle nose pliers. I'm going to pull it down a little bit. Actually, I'm going to lift it up and I'm going to pull it down a little bit. And I'm going to make sure that's pinched down flat. And I'm going to pull both wires in. And now I'm going to take my pliers and I'm just going to kind of press on my wires down flat in the back. And if I see anywhere on the side where the wires are lifted up too much, then I will pull them in. And I want to bring this in just a little bit more, just to make sure my stone is extra secure. And I'm going to do the same thing at the top, because the last thing you want is your stone to fall out. So I've bent my wires just a little bit more, just to get more of the shape that I want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these wires. And I'm going to take the two on the right and leave them here. And I'm going to take the two on the left. And I'm going to twist. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers. And I'm going to take it and I'm going to hold it at the end. I'll move this wire out of the way so I can do this. and I'm just going to twist. And this is a cool effect that you can get with square wire, is you can get this beautiful twisted wire effect. And you can place it wherever you want that way. And so I'm also going to twist this piece of wire. Okay, and so now you can see how that wire is twisted. Now what I want to do is I want to hold these wires close together. I'm going to straighten up my bail just a little bit. And I'm going to twist them around, hold my finger on top of it so it twists really tight and really close like that. And I'm just going to twist it, and it's almost making a little rosette. And then I'm going to bring this around, hold that in place, and bring this around to the back. And now what I need to do is I need to secure these wires. And I want to move this so it's a little bit more even. Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to lift up this wire right here. So now I'm going to feed this wire from the inside of this wire up underneath it. And I'm going to pull it up like that. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this wire. I'm going to take it and I'm going to feed it up under there. And then I'm going to reach in there with my bent nose pliers and I'm going to pull it up. And I want to make sure these are laying flat. There. And I'm going to check the front and make sure I like what I see. I'm going to press that down with my thumb. Now what I want to do is I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and I'm going to wrap this bottom wire around here. And I'm going to wrap this wire up around the top part right there. And I'm going to take my bent nose pliers and I'm going to kind of fold it back up underneath right there. And I'm going to press it down. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to take my bent nose pliers and I'm going to go up underneath here. And this is where bent nose pliers really shine, is on stuff like this. And I'm going to press that in so it's tight and make sure it doesn't feel rough. And so there's my back. And there's the front that I have so far. And then what I want to do with these two wires is I'm going to actually lead them straight. I'm going to straighten them out with my fingers, kind of warm up the wire. And I'm going to come to the left slightly. And I want to make sure this little rosette's laying down flat in the front. There. And I'm going to bend this around. And I'm going to bend it back around right here. So I've cut my wires to 2 different lengths. This one's a little bit longer, that one's a little bit shorter. And I'm going to start with the longer one. And I'm just going to take my Lindstrom fine tipped round nose pliers. And I'm using those instead of my regular round nose pliers because I want to be able, because this is a smaller stone and I just want to be able to make a really tight little loop. And so I'm just making a simple little loop right there. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this piece of wire. And I'm just grasping it right on the very end as close as I can to the stone. And then I'm just going to twist it up. And now I'm going to make sure, I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and I'm going to flatten down the wire. Whoa, it moved on me. And I'm just going to make sure they're flattened down and pressed in just a tiny bit pressed in. And I'm going to straighten up my bail. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to make sure everything looks the way I want it to look. And I'm going to try to press this down towards the front just a little bit, just gently. And I'm going to just look at all my wires, make sure everything looks pressed down. I'm going to press, and this wire back here I didn't press down after I looped those wires down, so I'm just going to take my pliers and press on it. And just, I'm going to try to pop this wire up on the side a little bit more. And I'm going to pop this wire up on the side, and it's just bending it very slightly is all. And that's how you make this, pendant. And if you have any questions, put them down below. Go ahead and subscribe, put your bell notification on. I plan on uploading a lot more jewelry videos. And if you have any questions or suggestions for videos, I would love to accommodate you and try to answer some of your questions or give you any information that I can, because I really want to help other people learn to do what I love. And so that's the pendant, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.